Hey everyone, welcome to Professor Long's Lectures on Anatomy and Physiology. This video is the last in a series of the nervous system for my lecture test 5 for my 2401 or Part 1 A&P students. We've gone over brain structure and function in the last video, which parts of the brain control which things. We barely scratched the surface on it. I tried to give you a basic fundamental idea. Like I said, we could spend a whole 2 years talking about the brain alone. It's so incredibly diverse and amazing in all the functions and how it works. We're still figuring it all out. Now, what we need to do is we need to do the 12 pairs of cranial nerves. As you know, there's 12 pairs of nerves coming off the brain, 12 on the right, 12 on the left, and those nerves each have specific functions. Now, one of the things you're going to learn when we get to the spinal cord is that all spinal nerves are mixed nerves. What that means is one spinal nerve has axons going out, motor neurons going out to muscles, and sensory neurons coming into the same nerve. So every spinal nerve is a two-way street, both sensory and motor in the same nerve. When it comes to the cranial nerves, some of the cranial nerves are almost entirely sensory. They only have sensory neurons coming in. Some of the cranial nerves are almost entirely motor, only motor commands coming out, and some of them are a mix, okay? Now we're going to go down page 79. We're just simply going to go down the list. I'm not even going to write all this out. I will only write on the board on a couple of these to show you some detailed information. The olfactory nerve is cranial nerve number 1. You should always know the Roman numeral. They're written in the note set. You got to learn the Roman numerals if you never learned them. And you need to know the name of the nerve. The olfactory nerve is cranial nerve number 1, and it is almost entirely sensory. It does the sense of olfaction, the sense of smell. It connects your nose into your brain and out to your temporal lobe where we can interpret smells. The optic nerve, cranial nerve number 2, is almost entirely sensory as well. All the neurons coming from your eyeball, from your retina, go in through the optic nerves, cross at the optic chiasm, and back to the visual cortex. So it's all vision. If you cut the optic nerves, your eyeball would not be able to communicate to your brain and you would be blinded. Okay? Now, oculomotor tells you oculo eyeball and motor movement. It moves your eyeball. And in particular, the oculomotor nerve not only moves your eyeball, but it can control your eyelids for blinking and opening and closing your eyes, and it controls pupil diameter. The nerves going to your pupil to constrict and dilate your pupil all go through the oculomotor nerve. So the oculomotor nerve can move your eyeball, it can help you blink and open your eyes and close your eyelids, and it constricts and dilates. Cranial nerve number 4 is the trochlear nerve. The trochlear nerve is also going to control your eyeball. It does eyeball movement. And it gets its name for the fact that it controls a muscle that loops through a little pulley or trochlea and pulls on your eyeball. So it gets the name for that function. The trigeminal nerve gets its name because it has 3 bodies. And the trigeminal nerve is cranial nerve number 5, Roman numeral 5 for trigeminal. The base of the nerve comes off of the sides of the pons, and then it has 3 branches, 3 major branches. Okay, and if you look at it, it really kind of goes along with a person's face like this. One of the branches of the trigeminal nerve is called the ophthalmic branch. Well, you know, ophthalmologist is an eye doctor, so the ophthalmic branch kind of monitors that sensory part of your face, or your it does the sensations from like the scalp area down to about your eyeballs. So if something's brushing your forehead, those sensations are going to go in through the trigeminal nerve. Okay, this branch is going to go to a part of your body where these bones called the maxillary bones are. So that's called the maxillary branch. The maxillary branch of the ophthalmic nerve, of the trigeminal nerve, is going to monitor sensations from your face from about your upper lip all the way up to about your eyeballs. So most of this area here. If you cut that nerve, you would be extremely numb in this part of your face. And then the last one is called the mandibular branch, because it goes to where your mandible is. So the mandibular branch is going to monitor the area of your face all around where your chin or your mandible are. It can also monitor sensations from your teeth and part of your tongue. Okay, so those are sensory information going into your brain. Now, there is a motor function for the trigeminal nerve, and one of the motor functions is it controls the muscles of mastication. To masticate means to chew. So the motor function of this nerve is to control chewing, okay, mastication. That's your trigeminal nerve. It's mixed. It does both sensory from these parts of the face, these three branches, and then it does motor for mastication. By the way, if you go to the dentist and they're shooting up your jaw to numb you up, they're trying to numb part of the mandibular branch. Okay. All right. The next nerve is called the abducens nerve, and if you look at the name should tell you something. So let me erase all of this, and let's look at the name, and then I'm going to go back and talk about something else. Abducens gets its name from the word abduct. Okay. The abducens nerves, if this is your eyeball and somebody's pupil, they're looking in this direction, we're going to have a series of muscles on the eyeball. If you were looking at someone's right eyeball, looking in that direction, there's a muscle out here on the side called the lateral rectus. When this nerve fires on the lateral rectus muscle, it makes your eyeball abduct or move away from midline. So there's another nerve that pulls on your eye this way and loops through a little piece of connective tissue like this called the trochlea. And so this muscle is called the superior oblique. The abducens controls the lateral rectus muscle of your eyeball. Now, we haven't learned the eye muscles. We do that in part 2. But nonetheless, this is called the trochlear nerve. Oops, didn't spell that very well. The trochlear nerve. So the abducens nerve is cranial nerve 6. The trochlear nerve is cranial nerve number 4. And it's going to control a muscle called the superior oblique muscle. This muscle helps rotate the eye a little bit when we look in a certain direction. There are 4 other muscles that control your eyeball. There's a medial rectus, a superior and inferior rectus. Superior rectus makes you look up, inferior rectus makes you look down. The medial recti would make you look across the midline. All of the other nerves are controlled by cranial nerve 3, the oculomotor nerve. Okay? So the oculomotor nerve controls all eye muscles except these 2, the superior oblique and the lateral rectus. The superior oblique is controlled by the trochlear nerve, because that muscle goes through a trochlea, and the abducens nerves controls the lateral rectus, which would abduct your eyeball. So eyeball movement must be extremely important for finding predators, finding food, and finding mates for survival and reproduction, because we have 25% or 3 of the 12 cranial nerves dedicated for eyeball movement. Okay. Now, the facial nerve is the next nerve. So I'm going to erase all this. I'm going to talk about the facial nerve. The facial nerve helps you make faces. Okay. It's also sensory. It's a mixed nerve. So when we look at the human tongue, if this is anterior and this is posterior, this is your tongue sticking out, this is the back of the tongue. If we divided the tongue into 3 regions, then cranial nerve number 7 does sensations from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. And if you taste things, like if I asked you to close your eyes and I put some lemon juice on your tongue, you'd make a face. So cranial nerve number 7 not only monitors the anterior 2/3 of your tongue, it controls all of the muscles for facial expression. Got it? So anterior 2/3 of the tongue for sensory, and motor is the facial expression. Cranial nerve number 8 is called the vestibulocochlear nerve. The vestibulocochlear nerve goes by 3 names. The most accurate name is vestibulocochlear. This nerve goes to a part of your inner ear called the vestibule, which monitors our equilibrium, and the cochlea, which monitors hearing. But it is also called the auditory nerve. Audition is hearing. It's also called the acoustic nerve. So it goes by all three names: vestibulocochlear, auditory, or acoustic nerve. It is primarily sensory for hearing and equilibrium. Okay, you damage that nerve, you feel dizzy, or you can't hear, or both. Cranial nerve number 9 is called the glossopharyngeal nerve. The pharynx is the upper part of your throat, and glossa means tongue. And this nerve controls part of your swallowing muscles and your salivary glands. So it's going to control movement of some of the muscles in the pharynx for swallowing and saliva production. It also does the posterior 1/3 of your tongue. Taste and sensation. Okay, so 7 is the front of the tongue, 9 is the back of the tongue. Okay, the vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10, gets its name because it wanders. Vagus means to wander, and that is one of the few cranial nerves that wanders down into the thoracic cavity, and it controls some of your viscera. It can alter heart rate and breathing rate. It can control a lot of the structures involved in breathing and heart rate and some of our digestive function. So the vagus nerve actually has a lot of control, autonomic control of the ventral body cavity viscera. Part of its sensory, by the way, is it does sensations of trunk position. Like if you're swinging a baseball bat, that proprioception, that sensation, the idea of where is your chest and your body positioned if you're swinging back, and then as you're swinging through, if you need to make adjustments, it's doing sensations from the positioning of your chest muscles, called the proprioception of the trunk. Spinal accessory nerve, also simply called the accessory nerve, is cranial nerve number 11. That one controls a lot of throat muscles for swallowing as well. And then the hypoglossal nerve, number 12. Hypo means below and glossa means tongue. The hypoglossal nerve will move your tongue for speech. So when you're speaking, you have to move your tongue to help you to alter the sounds that you're making and help you form some of the words. It also does sensory from some of those muscles involved in speaking. So, number 1, olfaction, smell. 2, optic, vision. 3, oculomotor, moves your eyeballs. All the eyeball muscles except for 2 of them. Number 4, trochlea, controls one of your eyeball muscles for movement. 5 is trigeminal. The trigeminal is the motor part, is chewing, mastication, and the sensory part is the 3 branches going to your face: ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular branch for sensations from the surface of the face. The abducens nerve is cranial nerve number 6. It controls one of the eyeball muscles for movement, abducts your eye. Facial nerve, cranial nerve number 7, is going to do taste from the anterior 2/3 of your tongue and the muscles of facial expression. Cranial nerve number 8, the vestibulocochlear nerve, does hearing and equilibrium, also called the auditory nerve or the acoustic nerve because of the hearing part, but that leaves out the equilibrium. Cranial nerve number 9, glossopharyngeal, is going to do part of your pharynx and part of your tongue for swallowing and saliva and the sensations from the posterior 1/3 of your tongue. Cranial nerve number 10 is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve controls a lot of the viscera and the ventral body cavity. Cranial nerve 11 would be spinal accessory, and that nerve is going to move a lot of throat muscles involved in swallowing, and actually a little bit of some of your neck muscles as well, but don't worry about that. And the hypoglossal nerve number 12 is going to move your tongue for speech. Okay, so those are the 12 pairs of cranial nerves. There will be some questions on a quiz about those. Our last nervous system quiz is going to involve these last 2 videos, all the brain structures and functions, and the 12 pairs of cranial nerves. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something. I hope you had as much fun as I did. All right. Listen, guys, hang in tight and keep pushing. We're almost done. I know we don't have a lot of time, but the college did extend the semester up to 2 weeks, and we're going to bleed into some of that. Those of you that have Maymester courses, I'm sorry, I don't know what else to do, but we got to finish this stuff and finish off this semester. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances, but we're going to do the best we can, you and I together. So, if you're having issues, contact me. We'll try to work through them. But keep plugging, keep pushing, work as hard as you can, and do the best you can. All right? Thanks for watching. Again, I hope you had as much fun as I did. See you guys on the flip side.